Okay, so we are recording. Thank you everyone for being here. Of course, if you want for privacy reason, you can turn off your webcam, you can change your name. We'll share the recording on AMI channel, YouTube channel later on. So be mindful, whatever you share, there's not going to be anything controversial or particularly delicate, I expect, during this session. Thank you for bringing with you pen, paper, iPad, whatever you brought with you. Today we'll win I can't draw syndrome. We will not turn you into artists. We'll do a little bit more of that in the next session, which is planned for May, but we will share that maybe at the end of today. So what are we going to do now? Well, first of all, as every talk, as every presentation worth of its name, we're going to introduce the speaker, which is me. And I'm going to self-introduce myself through a story. Let's see if this experiment works. Let's cross our finger. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, you can.
I love that. Cool. So today's talk is called Talking Visually, and it's run by me, together with James, support. And for EMI, if you want to check my visual work, this is my Instagram account, but that's not why you're here. You're here to listen me talking about how to create visuals. And who's me? Some of you may know, some other may have picked up. I'm an Italian. And as very stereotypically we would assume, as an Italian, I have plenty of passions. Two of those I knew since I was born. A big one is that I love pressing keys, any type of keys. And initially I thought I would have loved to become a pianist, a musician, which is something I started only a couple of years ago. But life took me in a different direction, and I'll tell you more about that in a minute. Another huge passion of mine were video games. I still love them, much less time now to play with those, but I still do love them. A third huge passion that I didn't know I had, but I discovered farther down the line, is that I love to talk. Also very stereotypical for an Italian. I love to talk and talking to people, not just to myself. So we'll talk together in a moment. So with these three passions, it felt almost obvious for me to put them together and to become a software developer. You see, keys, video games, talking, I didn't know yet at the time was a passion. And there was no video game software company close to where I was. So I started developing more standard system for small startups. And I started looking at Amazon and Twitter and Apple as, role models and areas and places where I would have liked to work. And over time, I decided that it was not enough for me to just read about those amazing experiences that I was reading about in blogs, and I wanted to be part of those. But in Italy, there was nothing like that, especially not in my small region, which is lovely, absolutely lovely. I would recommend a lot of places to go on holiday, but not the best to work. So what could have I done? Well, I looked on the world map and I've seen a flag that's similar colors to mine. And it happened to be one of the biggest tech hub in Europe. Very easy to go there. I had a couple of friends. My partner lived there a year. So there we go. Take the plane, go to Ireland. And there I started working a lot. I tend to work a lot all the time, but in that case, I worked a lot trying to, land a job in Amazon, Twitter, Apple, Microsoft, whatever that was. And then while I was working and spending a lot of energy and getting better, I hope to, I realized that what I missed was not a big experience working on very complex products and working on very tough technical challenges. I was more and more thinking about team collaboration and creativity and how to bring those two together. And the thought of that over time made me sad. So I said, I went to my manager and I discovered that there was something that could have helped. I said, that there is this thing called Agile that I think can make me happy. But suddenly the manager had something else in mind. I said, Agile doesn't pay. You don't produce code. It doesn't work for you. It doesn't work for us. We have limited resources. We can't do that. I can't bill you to my client. No. Long story short, no. And my first reaction was to just, leave the room very, very sad, incredibly sad, I would say. And it took me a couple of years of exploration before something started to happen. I started to talk to people, about the passion I had. And some of these people didn't have a clue at all. Some of these people didn't have a clue, and actually their first reaction was quite negative. But some of them started encouraging me. Some of them knew already, had already done the path that I was starting, or they were intrigued by what I was getting myself into. And so with their support, my voice started strengthening and become louder and louder and louder. And hopefully I didn't break anyone's ear in the process. But I started to be heard. I started to be heard in organization, conferences, and different spaces and communities. And I started discovering there were a lot of people who were either already on the journey or wanted to jump on the journey with me. And that's where my magical story with Agile starts and moves to a new world. And this is where we get to a new place. We get to today. And today I'm one of the guides in AMI. Let me turn this down. One of the guides. And as everyone, like James and Ashlyn and Kevin, I bring something that is special, unique. It's my flavor to the way we teach and we try to spread the love for agility. And in my case, you may have guessed that's visualization. What does visualization bring? Why did I choose it? Well, first of all, because I love it a lot, but also because I think it can be incredibly useful. And the next 15, 20 minutes are going to be for us to explore about what that means, why it can be useful, where it can be useful. The first thing that I believe visualization can be incredibly useful is to do exactly what I've done now. And that's it. And that's, sorry, telling stories. Now, I would ask you, if you don't mind, in the space, oops. As a storytelling tool, what do you think visualization brings to the table? Can I ask you to drop me a couple of thoughts in the chat? Based on what you've seen now or what you know being true. While you do that, I'm going to decorate a little bit this visual, just to buy you a few seconds. Okay, I'm reading.
I can call some of these out if you like.
Yes, please. Could you call me about 5 out of that,
so we got
James?
Keeping people engaged. Engagement.
Yeah, let's do that.
Fun.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to paraphrase one as inclusivity. The statement is actually that it speaks to different types of learners.
Mm-hmm.
And something about content or volume. So there's a lot more that can be said in a picture than text.
How would you summarize that in a word or two?
Maybe descriptive, or can the
informative?
Yeah, you guys might be able to improve on it on the call.
I saw a second instance of relatable. If that's okay, I'm going to pick that one.
Okay.
Purely because of frequency. Relatable.
Oh, there's about conveying emotion as well, which is probably worthy of a mention.
Okay.
Sentiment. Yeah, thank you all.
Thank you. I lost my marker, which is very upsetting. There it is. So we said that storytelling, augmented visualization brings fun, makes the stories relatable. They help convey emotions. They drive engagement, and they make stories more inclusive, or the experience of telling them and living them and listening to them more inclusive. I will pause there 20 seconds for you to reflect on all of this and think at ways that you can bring visualization in your day-to-day to improve your storytelling. Awesome. But if to me, if visualization stopped to enhancing storytelling, that would be already a massive hit and a fantastic reason to study it. But it's not the only field where you can get some help. There's another one, at least another one. We'll touch only 3 today, which is process mapping. And in particular, something that makes me think that I believe will be connected is conveying emotions. How many of you come from an IT background? And how many of you have heard UML as a modeling language, or BML if you're a business analyst, or any of those languages that allow to visualize concepts, flows, and activities? It can help them make them objective if you want, and describe them and communicate them with someone else, ensuring that there's as much alignment as humanly possible, knowing that you will never be able to know 100% what the other person is thinking. So those languages are fantastic, and they can easily be converted, well, semi-easily, be converted to code that can be understood by machines. But generally speaking, not all the time, they lack something, which is the emotional component. Let's try to build on that. And if you're thinking about UML, a sequence diagram is the closest thing that you can think of. Let's try to build on that to bring in visualization and another side of visualization in improving the way we represent flows and processes. So imagine that you have your user who's ordered something, and is quite upset because that something is not arriving on time. It was my case 2 weeks ago when I ordered a document camera to run this meetup, and my package was a little bit delayed. So what you typically do? Well, depending how polite you are, you may fire an email to someone and that email may be a plain email, or maybe a little bit heated, on fire even. And at a certain point, you get a reply from this because the customer service replies between 2 hours. So you get your turnaround fairly quickly. And so as a user, you're still not very happy because you still don't have the product that you need with you, but you start to be a little bit less upset with the company. And it's only when 2 days later, your parcel arrives that as a user, you go from upset to, okay, sorry, to be glaringly happy. Can I ask you, like before, what words brings to mind this approach to describe a flow?
Some of those have started coming through. Simple, clarity. The focus of what happens inside the person. So empathy.
Empathy.
There are a few more. You can take your pick. So user centricity, languageless, a story, kind of like a comic.
Well, let's grab all the three, if I can make them fit. User-centric, story, and I'm not sure if it's fully centered. Hopefully, yes. The last one you mentioned, sorry, languageless. I'm gonna write no words, if that's okay. It's simple. Representing processes this way, it's simple. It's clear. Can I ask you how many business documents and requirements you've written or read that are beyond the size of 20 pages? A Word doc with more than 20 pages. And sometimes there's a screenshot there. You said, okay, thank you very much. That's a static picture of the screen. Now what? I don't know how my user will feel. In this super short story, we have a couple of aspects that we can empathize with. We can see that the user is upset. We can also empathize with customer support receiving an email and start thinking, do they have the tools to provide information to reassure the customer, or do they not? And so we can start thinking about the back end, not the computer science backend, but the human backend of our company and our processes. It's user-centric. We think about the user first. We draw empathy maps. We think about personas. Do we then describe their work and interaction with our application in these ways, or with any process? Doesn't have to be a software application. I haven't seen that done very often. I would encourage you to try. Give it a try and see what happens. If you are on the business side, if you're a product owner or just a business analyst, so you may not have decisional power. Very often I hear complaints about, whatever I write, developers don't care about. They just ignore it. They have no empathy for my user. Help them. Help them building that. It's a story. We are telling a story. Go back here. Because it's a story, we've defined it before. It's going to be fun, relatable, drive engagement. How many of you have been engaged during a backlog refinement session? This could be a way to make it engaging and not dropping dead. Finally, there are no words, which is a good thing in a world that is more and more international, and not everyone has a good command of the language, especially when we think about technical, highly trained people with technical skills may be brought in because of their coding skills more than their conversational skills. That was my case. When I arrived to Ireland, I could understand maybe 5% of what I was told by the architect that was sitting in front of me. For 2 weeks, I barely talked because I was just ashamed that I couldn't understand the specific accent. Then I learned, but it took me a couple of weeks to get there. Cool. Promised you 3 aspects where we can use visualization. Third one, graphic recording. What does that look like? Well, we've been doing it for the last, how long? 20 minutes or so? It's exactly what we're doing here. And you can do it, on your paper, in small format. You can do it digitally, also in small format on your iPad. Or if you're lucky to have an office, or simply just happens that occasionally you get to meet in person, you could draw it on a flip chart. So as a graphic recording tool, can I ask you, what do you think visualization brings to the table? How does it enhance the experience? You know the drill. Share your thoughts in the chat and James will help us pick in a few. Oh, Chris, you are too kind. We'll get you there. Not today, because that's not the scope, but we'll get you there. I've seen you getting really, really good.
Keep the focus.
Keep the focus. Yes.
And on a similar note, being engaging.
Mm-hmm.
Engaging people and therefore more of the brain, making it more relatable. So yeah, lots of thoughts around the engaging and focus and also the understanding.
I'm gonna repeat relatable, if that's okay. And I'm running out of space. So, and that's okay. I think we've recorded enough. I don't think anyone can retain more than this information in their heads. Hopefully, and we'll share this picture later. If I were to share with you this picture at the end of the meetup, you can go back in a week time and you'll probably remember a lot of the conversation, a lot of the things that you thought about it. And this hopefully relatable will look like it's yours. It's your thing. It's not a document that someone threw at you. It's not a super fantastic, awesomely well-designed poster that has been built in isolation by someone who doesn't know your name. Okay. So visualization helps us with storytelling, process mapping, graphic recording, and a few more things that we'll discover in a moment. James at the beginning, if you remember, made you draw something for a few seconds. Hopefully some of you has managed to draw something. Some of you may have tried. Some of you may have remained paralyzed because of what we mentioned at the beginning, ICD, I can't draw syndrome. So what we'll try today is not to turn you all in masters, but just to help you break in that syndrome there. And then we'll explore how we can bring all of this to life in our work lives. So if I can invite you to draw along with me and bring your, again, paper or iPad or whatever is the tool of your choice, I invite you to reflect for a second and be honest with yourself. Can you draw? And for every one of you who has answered no, stick with us 5 minutes. So for sure, if you're here, if you manage, yes, Sophie, I agree with you. If you manage to connect to this call, for sure, you can type, you can write, you can type on a machine, but probably before learning that, and this may change in 20 years, but probably you learn how to draw with how to write with your hands. If you can do that, you can draw anything, literally anything. What you need is like when you learn your language, you need to learn a vocabulary and a grammar to be able to use it so that whatever you do is understandable and recognizable. It's all about learning that. What is our vocabulary? Like in normal written language with the A, B, C, D, and depending on the country you're in, you may have different letters, but that's the concept that we are mostly familiar with, at least in the Western culture. In drawing, you have simple vocabulary, even smaller, which is made by a dot. Can you see it from there? Thank you. You have a line. And this is where I invite you to draw along. You have simple shapes that are actually just the result of combining lines, but it's just handy to think about those this way. You have a square, that could be a rectangle, and you can have triangles. Another symbol that you have is a circle. And finally, just as a catch-all, you have a squiggle. Don't try to copy this, just draw a random curved line. Now, this is your last resort. I would argue that you can do most of your work with these 5 symbols here. This is your alphabet. Let's try to demonstrate them. So imagine your written alphabet. You know, A. So A, it's a 1, 2, 3. Straight lines. Okay, easy enough. Let's try B. That's 1 straight line, and two, allow me a variation here, two semicircles, one here and one here. And I appreciate that I'm maybe sounding patronizing, but stick with us a few more seconds. C is half circle. D, again, straight line, half circle. I write F just to get to 5 because it's a nice number that I like. C, D, E. Actually, let's do E to follow with the alphabet. 4, straight line. As simple as. And I hope that you can believe me that you can write all the rest of the alphabet using these symbols. In the same way as we've used primitive symbols to draw simple symbols, and symbols are already drawings, so these are already drawings. Let's try to combine this to create more what a normal person would normally consider a drawing. Let's think, for example, of something that can be built with the word Usmo. Now, I'm pretty sure, I know some of you are fairly experienced visual practitioner. You will probably recognize the word Usmo. For all the others who don't know the answer, do you know what you can build with these 4 letters? Okay. Let's try it out. So we have our U, a little bit inclined, if that's okay. Done. Let's put an O here. That's done. Let's do a Z. And let's put an M. And there you have your light bulb. Then you can decorate it if you want with some simple straight lines. And maybe some color so you can bring it to life. But this is as hard as it gets. Now, if you've been drawing along and you believed you had ICD syndrome, well, you've just drawn. So that's gone, should be gone. If you need a few more examples, we can, for example, think of what we can build with this. These are 4 U's and a J. Any idea? A flower, that's an interesting one. Yes. I'm gonna add an O for the flower in a second. I think, yeah, parasol is what I had in mind. Good stuff, Em. So you have a new, a U upside down. 3 more. And finally the J. Flower, let's try that. So I'm gonna cheat and add an O. Let's see what we can come up with. So we put the O in the center. We put a U here, a U here, a U here, a U here. Sounds about right. A star. I'm pretty sure all of you have learned how to draw a star with how many it is? 5 lines? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we could continue for the entire hour, but I don't think they would bring you so much additional value. There are entire libraries of icons that you can use, and that becomes your vocabulary. The idea is that you build a vocabulary of, you don't need more than 20, 30 of these. And with this, you can go back and create stories, graphic record almost anything, describe process mapping. We'll do a little bit of that in the next meetup. But right now, what we would like to do is to start looking at how can we apply these skills as concepts. Maybe not so much the drawing, but the idea of bringing visualization. I'm seeing an esteemed guest, Chris. Hello.
Hello there.
Hello. I think you are a pretty famous user and creator of visualization in some of your work. I would say all of your work, really. Can you tell us a little bit more?
As a default, I pretty much aim to use some form of visualization in 90% of my work, largely using Miro or any interactive virtual whiteboard that I can get my hands on. And yeah, it's a huge part in how I engage audiences in particular. Some of the great wording that people were using earlier helps make it engaging, memorable, interactive. And yes, someone's pointed out there, Suyal, I do so to create lots of themed retrospectives. And a lot of the words I've just mentioned is why I do it, but also because I'm a firm believer that the workplace should be fun, and visuals is one of the key mediums in which I help it be fun.
Fantastic. I wonder how many people here are users of Chris' work. I would take a bet, probably at least 50%.
A number, yeah, a number.
Good number. How did you add the initial idea, Chris, to start bringing it?
Oh, there's a story behind that. So once upon a time, because all good stories start with once upon a time, Frankie, I was a Scrum Master and I was tasked with running a retrospective. And at the time, it was face-to-face, in person, and you'd prepare the meeting or the retro ahead of time by going to your meeting room and getting all your Post-it notes, and you'd have a whiteboard and otherwise. And a lot of the formats out there were just the stop, start, continues and the sad, mad, glads. And I'd seen the disengagement and how repetitive it had become for those involved. So I remember trawling through one of my favorite resources at the time, tastycupcakes.org. And I came across the Elvis retrospective and I thought, oh, this is cool. It had a picture of Elvis, a visual drawing of Elvis, a cartoon style Elvis. And I just loved how it used a combination of the visual alongside the discography, so Elvis songs, to get people thinking a little bit differently, to engage different parts of their brain. So it would say things like, don't step on my blue suede shoes, or return to sender. And it said return to sender was, what should we be pushing back on? What should we be saying no to as a team? And I thought that's so much better than just saying, what should we stop doing? And that was the king of retrospectives. So I thought I'm going to create the queen, and Queen, the rock band, the retro. And rather than saying, what should we continue doing as a team, you play the song, Don't Stop Me Now, usually something you hear at 2 a.m. in a nightclub, or if you're an English person at any party. And Don't Stop Me Now became, what should we continue doing as a team? And I enjoyed it. And I shared that as a retro format, and it became very popular. And then it just became my default way of doing things because I saw how well received it was.
Fantastic. Thank you, Chris. And of course, we've all been inspired by your ideas and your work. And someone is sharing, Kevin is sharing, that Retromat is building a lot of templates. I've seen a lot of people following your steps. Something that I haven't seen yet so much used is how you're leveraging another expert visual practitioner, Steve, who unfortunately should have been here, but didn't manage to last minute. So we'll talk on his behalf and you can watch the recording. I know you brought him to enhance your training experience. Can you tell us a little bit more about that, knowing that it's quite fresh?
Of course. So when I was faced with running my own training cohorts, and I do this Scrum Mastery over several months, I know, Frankie, you're involved with this as well, as part of the Agile Mastery Institute. And I hated the whole traditional way training is often done, which was, you just see a lot of slides and then maybe do some interactive exercises. And I knew my own limitations. I thought if I tried to turn those slides into something cool and visual, I would struggle. So I invited Steve to be involved in one of my cohorts, and we kind of did a bit of a trade, a barter, shall we say, where I gave him, discounted access to several months of learning, and he in return agreed to visually represent the training course. So some of the key slides or some of the key points about empathetic and resourceful, the retrained model, alongside sketchnoting his experience of being part of the cohort. So I have found that brought my brand to life a little bit more. It created a more engaging experience for those involved. And it's something that I intend to do more of. Steve and I have a great working relationship. We collaborate on ideas for content all the time. Our most recent one was creating a canvas that enabled people to capture what psychological safety meant to them in the form of a kind of coat of arms style. I know, again, Frankie, you've seen this, but it was almost our precursor to a team charter workshop, because it was some of the things we wanted to have in place to ensure psychological safety was there. And that leads into, okay, now that we know that about each other and what we've agreed psychological safety means to us and the conditions that help create it, we can then use that to create some ways of working in the form of a team charter and some team agreements.
Fantastic, Chris. Fantastic. And I've seen Steve publishing maybe yesterday an example of a team chart. I'm not sure if it's the same or something along the same lines. There's a theme.
Yeah, it's a Futurama themed one. A Futurama themed one,
yes.
Right? So yeah, he and I talked about doing some, in the same way I do retrospectives that are themed. We talked about, hey, why don't we bring that same energy, that same creativity, that same thematic way of doing things to other common agile things like team charters? And I've obviously began experimenting with doing it for backlog refinement. So you don't have to think about backlog refinement just in terms of, what should be top of the backlog and otherwise. You could be saying, right, let's think about it in the context of Tinder. So what should we be swiping left on, i.e. what should be bottom of the backlog, or what do we not care about? What should we be super liking? What should go top of the backlog because it's really important to us right now? Or what should we boost? Yeah, if anyone's a singleton and has used these dating apps, there's lots of little things, bits of functionality that we can use. So we begin using thematic things that people are familiar with to bring a bit more life to a very common, repetitive agile ceremony.
Fantastic. Thank you, Chris.
No problem.
I'd like to share, I've seen Steve recently publishing also a manual of me, which I think is another great way to tell a story about yourself. It can be about yourself or in a team canvas about a team. And these are two fantastic ways to bring visualization to life. You mentioned before music. To me, that also qualifies as visualization, not in a, let's say, traditional sense. It's not something that we see, but helps bring into life emotion and things and building an experience that can help us living a different reality or tap into emotions that we didn't know we had, or somehow inspiring, and in general, bringing the abstract to life, materializing so that we can touch it and play with it. And so we heard a lot. Thank you, Chris. If you don't mind me bringing back the attention on the group now. We heard some inspirations and ideas. I would like to hear what else this group has. So I prepared a very, very, very simple mural board for you. It's in the chat. I invite you to follow us there. And you'll see how, for example, because that's a question I get a lot, how can we bring these drawing skills into a remote world? Well, something very, very simple is to draw a couple of people. And I can promise you these take maybe 5 minutes to draw, including the color and the cutout and the sharing. They're very, very simple once you learn the technique and you are comfortable with the vocabulary. And you paste them in a space. So here there are 3 possible ways to represent a Scrum Master, a product owner, and the team. You'll see that there are different sticky notes around. I'll invite you, if you don't mind, to spend a few minutes to share your ideas, things that you've seen been done or that you would like to see been done by a Scrum Master using visualization, or what could a team do using visualization? What a product owner could do using visualization? going to share the screen for the benefit of people who will watch the recording. In a moment. Let's see what's coming up. Let's go to the dev team first, just because it's higher on my screen. Solutions architect, using a chart to visualize the architecture design that is being proposed. Yeah, fantastic idea. We've seen some of that with the process mapping. Love that. Brainstorming sessions. Can I ask the originator to comment on that? Feel free to come off mute and just share.
I was thinking just using some sketching, not only just writing some ideas down, but also using sketching to create even more ideas, or to have just simply more fun.
Thank you. I think I recognize the voice. It was probably Daniela.
Correct.
Collective problem solving, exploring alternatives, not just the first solution defined. Love that. And someone has started to go crazy. Wonderful. Please go as crazy as you want. Now that you've seen that you know you can draw, you can either use the functionality of Mural to draw freehand, or if it gets tricky with your mouse or the trackpad, feel free to add icons. You don't need to be a master painter to recreate something like this. There are different tools. Miro, for example, as a partnership, as a plugin, Drawify, where some of the best visual practitioners are creating libraries of images like this that you can just import. Some of those, a lot of those are for free. Some are to be paid for. Meeting notes we've seen before, graphic with the graphic recording. Telling stories for requirements. Yeah. Architecture, similar to the one above. Communication of work progress. How would you bring visualization in communication of work progress? Again, originator, can I ask you to come off mute or drop it in the chat if you want?
So I was thinking something along the lines of what's been done, what's in progress, what's being blocked, and just visualizing how a project is progressing and how each stage is developing.
Thank you, Adi. So I'm gonna continue with the sticky notes. If anything that I'm reading catches your attention, drop it in the chat. I'm happy to call out someone, or you can just come off mute and comment. This is a meeting for all of us, really. It just happens that James and I have been the facilitators, Chris a guest, but this is for all of us. Thank you, Adi. Gonna move to Scrum Master. Let's pick a few things. Now, I'm curious to learn what's this? What's the idea here? Originator, can you comment? And if not, that's also okay.
This one is a timeline, and you
Okay.
can use it in multiple ways. I recently read dynamic reteaming, and there were some exercises with timeline as an example.
Fantastic. I think I recognize Pavel there. I made. Using it for knowledge transfer about processes, conflicts, impacts. This is probably very dense, would be worth unpacking. This is probably an entire course in itself, I think.
But I would be interested in that one.
I would, if only someone had some content like that. I'm gonna do a shameful plug. We do have some of that in the pathway. There's a lot about managing conflict, assessing impact. I don't recall anything about processes, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was some of that. And a lot of the mastery pathways do include visualization. Now, some people may insist a lot on that, like Chris and myself. Some other of the guides may bring a different flavor, but all of the pathways will cover those topics. Memes, or I never know how to pronounce that. Memes. Okay. Well, what's the value of that? What makes it a useful tool in the tool belt of a Scrum Master? Anyone would like to comment on that?
Yeah, I'll comment. I put it down. It's been a fun bit of humour. I find that memes can capture a lot and say things that everyone's thinking. So my team currently have a really good culture where there are memes to react about how when you're feeling something. And you can tell pretty quickly whether it went positively or not so positively in the minds of the team. Generally, what's your first thoughts and feelings? And we can meme in for a bit of a laugh.
Can I also build on that, because I added the meme your sprint one?
Absolutely, Chris. I'm keen to hear.
Yeah. For me, I don't know about anyone else, but memes are sometimes my default method of communication with my closest friends. And if this is a common form of language, a growing form of language for people, it's particularly one that people enjoy, there are so many ways you can use it. So you could say, hey, what was the last iteration for you in a meme form? And it just gets people looking and searching and bringing out different ideas. You say, what does the next iteration look like in meme form? And you could use that to build collectively what the team want to move towards. You could use little rituals like, hey, we've just completed a retro action. Let's share a celebratory meme or a celebratory GIF. There's so many ways you can use these to bring a bit of fun and energy. I've used them in town halls as well, where you put a bunch of memes up and say, which one are you feeling like today? And you get everyone to move their cursor to it or put a little icon to it. So it can be as an icebreaker. Loads of ways.
Fantastic. There's always so much behind the word. And even something that may sound silly or, like trivial. Well, I'm going to say the word superficial, knowing that it doesn't translate so well in English. Like memes can have a lot of power. We just very often overlook it, how simple and powerful something like this can be. So thank you, Tom and Chris, for sharing. That's amazing, amazing. I'm going to read, but then skip over fun retrospectives. I think we've covered that. Engaging the team and organizing. Help. What do we mean by organizing in this context? Any ideas? How can we use visualization to help us organize? I'm going to apply the 10 seconds rule. When I ask a question, if no one answers after 10 seconds, I'm going to move on so the author can pass. But if someone else wants to jump in, you're always welcome. I quite like this one personally. Draw a glass to show how full your workload is. And I think it's all work-life balance has always been a struggle, but in the last 2 years, we've become aware of that. And at the same time, I think that in the last few months, at least this has been my experience, we've almost forgot how much we've struggled during the pandemic. And we seem to have reverted back to ignore the fact that there are challenges. So my invite, taking inspiration from this idea, is to check in with your teams, the people you hold dear, but also with yourself. Do this exercise alone at the end of the day. I know that some people here are fan of personal agility. Do some retrospective at the end of your day or your week and check what your workload look like. Can you fit everything into 24 hours? Or do you need to draw 2-hour glasses or 3 even? Fun retros and workshops, fun facilitation, memorable retros, helping explain Scrum to those new to the framework. And there was another one which has now been covered, sharing agile concepts in ways that are easy to understand. I'm gonna interpolate. I think, Chris, this is one of your favorite, if not your favorite memes, if I see correctly. Yeah.
Yeah, it was linked to the how full your workload is one.
Yeah.
So it's a great, yeah, memes are a great way to convey information in a comical way. I just wanted to share that example.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's move, as we have a few minutes left, let's move to see product owners. What can they do with visualization? Articulating the product vision visually. Look at this. Someone has already stepped up their game. Yes, totally. See, you can use icons of your tools. You don't need to be a master drawer. Again, there's nothing stopping you from starting tomorrow. Adapting the product vision through discoveries. Visualizing a feature and present new features. These continue on a similar theme. I can't help but being drawn to this drawing here, purely because I can't immediately decodify it. But maybe I'm not the only one who's been attracted by something mysterious. Author, originator, can you please comment if you're still there?
It wasn't me, but I've seen something similar to this before. It looks like the product backlog iceberg, where only 20% is above the water invisible or something like that.
Fantastic. It's interesting because if you flip it upside down, it could be break down a big item, or it could be interpreted as a funnel.
Yeah, that's the way I took it. It's like a funnel of ideas coming through. So from a refinement perspective or prioritization, like a funnel of things, and then at the bottom came the prioritized one.
So different ways to interpret this. I think a golden rule with visualization is never leave the image to speak by itself. They say that an image speaks louder than 1,000 words. An image plus words speaks even louder, and it's even clearer. It helps ensuring that there's alignment. So I would say always add a word there. Like if we had an iceberg funnel here, this would be much more powerful. So I have the inspiration, and I have a little bit. You never again have 100% confidence that you're aligned, but you increase over a lot the confidence that you are. Someone is having fun drawing processes, and I think we could go on for hours, but our time box is close to an end. So I think let's go back. Let's give back the word to James.
Thanks, and thanks so much to everyone for sharing. Insights coming off of mute. Not everybody's brave enough to, but that and all the messages in chat. So thank you. I've dropped a couple of links in the chat as well to plug the group itself. So like I say, we've managed to we've been coming up with a plan. We've got a bit of a pipeline for the next few months of meetup events where guides from AMI will host a topic. And so for today's at least, and some of our future ones, I really need to be able to say thank you to Frankie, on behalf of everybody here for giving up your time. Hopefully everybody's found it as insightful and valuable as I have. So thank you, Frankie. And so there'll be more. The next meetup will be hosted by Frankie as well. And that will be on the 15th of May. The first of the two links, the recent links that I put in the chat, will point you to a place where you can join our meetup community, and then you'll get the notification for the future events. And I thought I'd put in a second one there, which is to a community space. Some of you may already be involved in that space, but it's essentially just a network where all of the Agile Mastery Institute guides are in there. All of those people that go through the pathways are also there. and some people who have been around in Jeff Watts's Agile community for quite some time are also in there. So it's a great way to be able to carry on some of these conversations, maybe even share some of your insights and drawings if people have felt brave enough to leave here and start to take some of this visualization practice into your own work. Me and others in the community would love to be able to hear from you. And not least, the meeting recordings and previous events, all of that stuff will be a lot easier to find in the events tree. Thank you all very much, and I hope to see you again soon.
Bye all.
Bye. Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Well,
Thank you.
you.